Hello, everyone. Welcome to the HR Roundtable. I'm PJ Trudeau. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are very excited today to be talking about elevating, not replacing, how AI lets HR finally focus on impact. Absolutely something I think that is an important and definitely, I think, a priority for us, but we don't always have the time and or the tools for us to be able to identify how best to go about doing this. So very excited to have Lauren joining us to help us with this today. Lauren Winans is the CEO and principal HR consultant at Next Level Benefits, an HR consulting practice that provides access to HR professionals for interim talent and fractional HR support. With nearly 25 years of HR and employee benefits experience, Lauren possesses a deep expertise of HR best practices and what resonates with employees. Prior to funding Next Level Benefits in 2019, Lauren was a senior HR leader at General Nutrition Centers, American Eagle Outfitters, and Consol Energy, as well as part of the National Accounts Division at Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield. Lauren, let me turn it over to you.
Thank you, PJ. Hi, everyone. Really excited to be with you today. I love talking about AI, and so I'm super excited about this topic. I will say, AI. I mean, you can't open your inbox, you can't turn the corner without seeing something related to AI. So today we are really going to be focused on a piece of AI that I don't think is visited all that often. And so this is really about us, HR folks, and how can we shift our responsibilities away from tactical by leveraging AI tools and focus more on impact and more on the things that are going to, truly create value within an organization. So that's really where we're going to be focused when we talk about AI. I know that it's out there, it's everywhere, and it's being discussed at length. But we're going to hone in on what really matters to us as HR professionals. PJ did a great job of just, sharing who I am, but just to kind of reiterate, I was in corporate HR for a little shy of 20 years before I decided to go out on my own and start my own consulting business. So I had previously worked at, large global organizations, was in benefits and total rewards, but held some HR leadership roles as well. And then over the last 7 years, I've been focused on running my own consulting firm. And so I nerd out talking about HR topics. This is, AI is one that's near and dear to my heart. But I talk about benefits and all sorts of different, comp and org development, workforce planning, all of those topics are super exciting to me because I'm an HR nerd. So hopefully I'm not alone. So today's agenda, here's what we're going to be focused on. I'm going to set the stage. We're going to talk about, why HR is in this pivotal inflection point. We're also going to talk about, what AI can and can't do for your team. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about some real world examples. So I have a couple of case studies for us to talk through. So hopefully, some of those case studies might, spur some ideas and spark some creativity for you to take back to your own organization. And then we're also going to be talking about the purpose, strategy, and the human-centered work that HR professionals can really focus on after they've identified ways to leverage AI to free up their time. And then I have an action plan, some practical next steps and tools that you could potentially start using immediately if you feel so inclined. And then we'll have a live Q&A. So my goal is to, at least get to a point where there's 15 minutes of Q&A at the end, maybe even a little bit more, because this is one of those topics that, we're all kind of learning it together. And so, a question that you may ask might be on someone else's mind, or might be something that's on their mind that they don't even consciously know yet that it's on their mind. So this is a great way for us to learn for one another. Before we get started, I have a couple of polls within my presentation today. I have 3 of them. So if you have your phone nearby, If you want to, scan the QR code, you can answer this question. And the question is, how would you describe your organization's current use of AI in HR? And I will let you know, when you use Slido, this information is all anonymous. It's not being, held or saved. Your information's not being captured anywhere. So, just so that you're aware, feel free to answer honestly and freely. You're amongst friends and in a safe space here. And seeing some of these results here and how the bars are going back and forth, seeing that the answer is we're experimenting with a few tools. It's kind of what I thought. But I will say I am a little bit surprised that 30% of you are saying that AI is deeply integrated across your HR operations. That is fantastic. Now we're down to 27%. But I will, I am kind of shocked that that one's up there, in terms of what the answer is, because quite frankly, there are a lot of organizations that, haven't explored ways that AI can help their HR operations. They've certainly explored how AI can help maybe their IT function, or how AI could affect some of their forward facing, customer facing interactions, maybe if they're selling a product or a service. But there are very few organizations that have really focused themselves on looking at how AI can be integrated across HR. So this is really great to see. So just to set the stage here, we're at an inflection point. HR is really in a place, probably has been for the past, almost 10 years. But, I think that we're center stage, and we really are needing to learn new skills on the fly quite often in order to continue to provide value to our organizations. And, there's a lot of data out there, a lot of surveys that have been done over the course of, between 2003 and 2005. There's absolutely some data out there for 2026 that, just hasn't been available yet. But, what we're hearing is that, HR leaders are spending most of their time on administrative tasks. More than 60% of HR professionals feel that their strategic contributions are undervalued. And then there's, a large number of executives that are saying HR lacks capacity to support business strategy. And, I think when you look at these different dynamics, these different statistics, I think ultimately, what we can take from this is that there's opportunities to be had here. There's opportunities to free up our time from the tactical day to day to really focus on helping the business and providing value. And in turn, ultimately, getting the recognition that we all deserve, quite frankly, for, the value that we add to an organization. And so, I have it below here, the question isn't whether AI will change HR. It really already has. And it's up to all of us to decide, how do we incorporate this into our day to day? How do we incorporate this into our organization? How do we incorporate this into our existing HR processes so that we can become more efficient and free up our time to focus on things that will truly, truly matter directly to employees on a day to day basis? The administrative burden. So, you might feel a little bit differently, but for the most part, from some survey sources, we really do spend a lot of our time on, administrative and transactional tasks, and compliance and reporting. So, in these surveys that I had found, what's really eating up your time is, answering all those repetitive questions, processing requests and queries as it relates to leave and payroll. And, ultimately it's managing compliance, keeping the employee records up to date, and, ensuring that, all the check the box items are taken care of. And, I think a lot of us who get into HR, I think many of us find comfort in some of these tasks, and know this like the back of our hand and could do this in our sleep. But where we can truly add value to an organization is in areas that AI cannot support. And we're going to talk about that. And actually, we're going to talk about it right now. Thought I had another slide in between, but here we go. So what can AI do for us and what can't it do? So what I have on the left-hand side here is what AI can do. and then kind of reminding you what AI can't do. And I think it's important to always be kind of balancing this out because, as all of us, see in the media and, everything that kind of gets, fed to us, AI is taking over jobs. AI is going to, replace us. All these things that, you know, perhaps there are some roles that might be replaced. But I think what's important to remind us of is the things that AI cannot do. It can't do it yet, and it might never be able to do it. And a lot of these things are things that we are practitioners that can really usher this through an organization and feel very confident that we can add value in a way that AI cannot. So while AI can do things like screen resumes and answer common questions and generate job descriptions, offer letters, policy templates, really like the basic type things, that we maybe sometimes take for granted that, that we spend a lot of time on. AI can't build genuine trust with employees like we can. And AI can't navigate sensitive workplace conflicts like we can. They can't coach leaders through difficult moments like we can. And so, this is why it's important for us to remember that thinking about how you want to incorporate AI into your workday and into your processes doesn't mean that you're giving into this trend and that you're somehow positioning yourself to be without a job someday. I think that we all naturally can think, okay, what's in this for me, but also what can this do to me? I think it's just important to remember that AI can do a lot of things, but we are still valuable and we are still able to bring, really important skills to the table when it comes to kind of elevating what our work looks like from today to what it will look like, as time goes on and AI continues to evolve. There's many AI tools that are reshaping HR right now. I've listed a few here and there. I'm not going to go through all of these, but if this is of interest to you, feel free to. I think you'll be getting the recording, but feel free to take a quick snapshot or copy and paste this page. But ultimately, there's a lot of tools out there that are being created, not just within the systems we're currently using, but brand new organizations that are startups that are creating new tools like literally daily. And there's ways that we can improve upon existing process by exploring some of these tools and identifying, is this right for my organization? And if you haven't considered incorporating some AI tools into, let's say, your L&D process, for example, or your L&D program, maybe take a look at that, right? This is an opportunity to see that. I think most of us have been introduced to AI and HR through recruiting and through onboarding. Usually that is, one of the first places that HR professionals kind of, dip their toe into AI and how to bring that into some of the existing processes today. But there's lots of other areas of what we do, and different tools that are touching those different areas in many different ways. So my second poll question, which area of HR do you want AI to help within your organization? So which area do you most want assistance? So, we just looked at the previous slide where there's a variety of tools in different, functional areas within HR. But when you think about your day-to-day and where you could find the most value of, AI within your organization as it relates to HR, and then where would you like to leverage those tools? Where do you find that it would be the most meaningful, the best option in terms of creating efficiency and allowing you to be more productive within your day? Not surprising that HR ops and compliance is very high here in terms of the number one answer. People analytics is also an area, I think a lot of us spend a lot of time pulling data together and analyzing it, to present it to leadership or to ultimately just make a decision on something that we need to decide upon to roll out to the organization. And so people analytics is one of those things that there's tons of AI tools out there that can really make sense of what all of the data points are telling you in a very quick and efficient way that gives you a starting point. And that's kind of how I personally feel about AI. I really feel like AI is a starting point, right? It can produce deliverables, materials, insights that are a starting point. It's not meant to replace what we can think through ourselves, but it's a starting place for us. And HR operations is definitely, top up, high up there in terms of, zapping our time, and AI would be great to kind of take that over. So when we think about like, what does that actually look like, right? Like, so if I really want to have more, AI tools or AI functionality in different areas, let's say HR ops and compliance. Like, how do we actually go from start to finish? Like, what does that look like? So, I have three examples that I wanted to share with you. First, I want to talk quickly about the evolution of HR roles, and then we'll go into some of those examples. But if you think about, different roles here and what you're currently doing today, like, for example, a recruiter manually screening through hundreds of resumes, scheduling phone screens, entering new hire data. After AI, after tools can be put in place for certain areas of the process, that recruiter truly turns into a talent advisor, really focusing on candidate experience, building pipelines, and enhancing the employer brand. So, what you see here is, our roles evolve when we leverage AI, and our roles become elevated when we can leverage AI in ways that free up our time. So just for another example, you think about, HR business partners answering policy questions, processing status changes, scheduling meetings, talking with employees, basically better understanding what's happening within the organization through employee interaction. You're able to spend more time on that as a strategic HR partner after you've kind of gotten some of the tactical pieces off your plate, coaching managers, shaping culture, influencing business decisions. So there's tons of ways that you can kind of augment these roles and really evolve them into a more value add opportunity. Here's our first case study example, and we're going to talk about a recruiting transformation here. So this case study is based on Unilever, and I think they've done a pretty decent job of explaining, what AI was doing, for them, what their recruiters are doing now, and what the results are. And so when I walk through this, I do want to caveat that I think, we can talk about the benefits of AI all day, but I think we all know that there are some downsides, right? And there are tools that don't necessarily, they're brand new or they're being piloted, and we might be part of that pilot population. There are definitely some inherent biases that are in some of these tools, and there's definitely some concerns with security. And so, we're not going to spend a ton of time talking about all of the downsides today. This is really meant to focus on how can we, elevate our roles by using these tools. But I don't want to continue moving forward without mentioning that, it's up to us to do due diligence to ensure that we're choosing the right tools. And in this case study, Unilever found, the best way to incorporate some tools into its recruiting process. And they were able to see some fantastic results from that. And of course, what's available in the case study, is all the positives. So we have to know and take all of this with a grain of salt that in these case studies, there are probably, some downsides to some of the things that they implemented, but I'm going to focus on the upside today. So, just kind of looking at this case study here. So what AI is now doing for them, it's screening and ranking 100% of the applications. It's conducting a lot of the initial video interviews. It's scoring candidates on competencies, it's scheduling the follow-up interviews, and it's sending status updates automatically. I think we all know people who, and we might even be people on this call, who have been through a recruiting process, maybe for your own role or, because you are handling the recruiting within your organization. It might be friends that you've had interaction or former colleagues with. AI doesn't do this great 100% of the time. I think, there are times where people will say, well, I've applied to 100 jobs and I've only gotten like 2 responses, or so there's definitely kinks in the process, right? But according to Unilever, they've figured out the right mix of tools and process, to kind of, really be able to feel confident handing this over to AI to handle. So now, instead of recruiters spending a lot of their time on those items, they're really focused on identifying top candidates, building relationships, and also kind of redesigning and designing the candidate experience, advising hiring managers, and building diversity and inclusion strategies that inherently help to reduce bias that might be lingering somewhere within the AI tool that they've chosen to select. So the results here are that they found that there's a 16% increase in diversity of new hires. There's a 75% reduction in time to hire, and the recruiter time that was freed up was approximately 4 hours per role. I would say 4 hours to 30 minutes, like going from 4 hours to a 30-minute time frame. It's actually probably more than that, because I think a lot of us don't necessarily estimate how much time we're spending on things. I would imagine it's probably higher than that, but that's what they've identified in terms of their case study. The candidate NPS has increased significantly, and again, bias reduced through more structured scoring. So just seeing this example, this could be helpful to start getting the wheels turning for your own organization. Do you use AI tools today within recruiting? If you do, are you measuring the results in a way that could be helpful and meaningful to be sharing with folks within your organization? Are you checking in with recruiters to ensure, has your role augmented itself? And, what are you spending your time on? And can we help you get even more efficient through some additional tools or through some additional process improvements? So, that's where we can be most valuable as HR professionals, really checking in that process. But as you can see, it can really free up some time and create tangible results that are worth sharing internally to kind of show, okay, this is how we're evolving this. Another case study here is really focused on how to leverage AI for people analytics, specifically to help drive down turnover and increase retention. So IBM, they ultimately, had found that they were having some issues with retention, and so they wanted to leverage AI tools in ways that would help them get ahead of that. And so they, through their case study, after they implemented some tools and started leveraging people analytics in a different way, they were able to identify over 5,000 at-risk employees who potentially could be looking for other jobs or could potentially be, considering a move. And they were also able to, fully invest in this endeavor to ensure, that they could, find ways to get in touch in front of these employees who are at risk. And really focus on a targeted manager intervention to see if there was a way to reduce turnover and really focus on, the employee experience before employees decide that it's not right for them. So what HR did with these AI insights is they intervened proactively, and they personalized certain career conversations with the intent of really trying to keep people within the organization. They equipped managers with talking points that were specific to each individual's risk factor, and they designed targeted stay interviews and development plans for at-risk top performers. So really, it was about identifying, solid talent that you were worried was going to walk out the door, and really kind of focusing on not only letting them know how valuable they are by having their manager kind of intervene in those conversations, but also, developing plans that would kind of help people to understand where their path is. If you stay at IBM, here's what this could look like for you. IBM also took the opportunity to reshape their compensation structures based upon, the type of data that kind of came out of this endeavor and out of this exercise. And, they have estimated that they are saving approximately $300 million, attributing it to AI intervention. So they were leveraging AI tools to find the right data within their people analytics platform that helped them to identify who might be at risk. And, that is something that, I think all of us would probably love the opportunity and the time to focus on. So if you start to implement AI tools in the HR ops world and the tactical areas of your job, you'll have more time to kind of focus on areas like this where, okay, how can we evolve our people analytics so that I can identify who's at risk? And let's get ahead of that before they walk out the door and we end up, having to spend a ton of money and time on bringing someone else in. The last case study here is focused on Workday and how they were able to transform the employee experience. And so kind of how I structured this was showing the before and the after. So before, they would run engagement surveys once a year. It took them months to analyze all of the data. And by the time HR responded, kind of the moment had passed. A lot of people had forgotten about the survey, forgotten they had participated. In many cases, people had kind of left and come to the organization, didn't even know about the survey. But after leveraging AI to kind of power their employee experience on a larger scale, they were able to leverage pulse surveys that were AI powered to run continuously. So instead of that one point in time a year, having these pulse surveys running continuously allowed them to gather instant insights that they could then surface to HR themselves and managers. And then HR could be responding virtually in real time, leveraging this data in a new way, as opposed to, really focusing on that one collective effort each year. And also, before, HR spent 60% of their employee experience time on logistics, really talking through the communications, the event planning, what the Q&A would look like. But now, AI is handling all of that. So HR can really focus on designing the moments that matter and coaching leaders on culture. So, as opposed to spending all this upfront time on the planning piece, you can now be spending more of your time on the back end if you leverage AI in this way to really identify, okay, if we're finding that through this survey, folks who are being onboarded aren't feeling like a part of the team, there's an opportunity there. There's an opportunity for coaching leaders through that onboarding process, but there's also an opportunity to enhance your process entirely. What is it that people are missing out on? And so you're actually able to, triage or firefight that particular issue right away, as opposed to not necessarily even knowing about it for a full year until the next survey gets pushed out to people. So, now kind of said some of these things already, but I'll kind of run through them quickly. HR can now be focused on, coaching managers, and also, designing employee journeys, really thinking about career pathing and thinking about, how to support employees through really, key life moments. Also running listening sessions. So if you've got some data out of your pulse survey that you're like, I wish we could have a little more insight into that, you could be spending your time, focused on developing focus groups that help you to tease more out to figure out, okay, how can we update this process or this program in a way that's going to be meaningful. And you can also spend time on more strategic workforce planning conversation, and really focusing as well on developing leadership pipelines and succession plans. Those are all things that I think a lot of us love to work on, but sometimes just don't simply have enough time to focus on it. So hopefully through those last three examples, you can really, start thinking about, the different ways that, some of these larger employers that are out there are kind of embedding AI into their HR processes. Now I really want to focus on, almost like the after, right? Like, so, let's assume that fast forward, you've embedded a lot of AI tools are now saving you a lot of time. You've got this freed up time to now, reestablish your role and really focus on some really valuable pieces, of your work that really creates some high impact. And, so I've kind of listed a few here that, could really be areas where, AI isn't going to be strong, but you are. And so, coaching and developing leaders, thinking about partnering with them through their own growth path, but also helping them to grow others within the organization. So, for example, you notice a new manager is struggling with conflict, you coach them through it, and you watch them grow into the kind of leader that people really want to stay for. I think we all have been in a situation where we notice or we see something that we could impact or influence through coaching, but simply don't have the time, effort, or ability to make that happen in the moment. Then the moment passes, it's a little bit more a fleeting topic, and it doesn't get addressed in the way that we want it to until it becomes a problem. And then we're in cleanup mode, trying to help this leader understand that their behavior over the past year hasn't been helpful for the organization. So this is about proactivity and creating that high impact before problems come to pass. Culture architecture. You could be freed up to spend more time, designing an onboarding experience that makes new hires feel that like they belong from day one, for example. Really focused on, retention and, thinking about ways to create a culture, an environment that's focused on psychological safety, but also allows people to thrive. Employee advocacy, being the voice that says, have we considered how this impacts our people? Being that voice in the room, it's about having time in your day to carve out the moments to be in the room. So when you have that time freed up on your schedule, on your calendar, to be available, to be in some of those leadership meetings, that allows you to say, hey, how's this going to impact our people before the decision is made, as opposed to us having to, clean things up or react quickly to a decision that's been made after the fact about how it's going to impact our people. So I don't know if this is the greatest example, but it's the one I thought of. So for example, you push back on that return to office mandate. You bring data that you have gleaned from your people analytics, that you've got this new AI tool that's kind of running in the background and helping you create these real-time pulse surveys. You bring that data on the employee sentiment and you help to shape a policy that truly works for everyone. So we're not always included in some of these decisions, but when we free up our time and we can show the value that we can bring as decision makers for the business, we can be part of that conversation and really focus on employee advocacy. And lastly, a last example here, strategic workforce planning. I think this is an area where we all can agree that we need to be focused on this sooner than later, but we don't always have enough time and ability to really focus on what does our workforce planning strategy look like? What does our process look like? Who do I need to be involving? What skills does the business need? And what gaps are we going to run across, as AI is evolving? So for example, if you identify that AI is going to displace 30% of a team's, workload within the next, 18 to 24 months, this allows you time and runway to design that reskilling program proactively. So we want to get ahead of these things and be more strategic in our thought process. And, using AI to free up our time, be less focused on the admin and more on the high impact HR work, is really going to not only provide value to the organization, it's going to impact employees directly. And it's also going to make us feel good. It's going to help us elevate our role a bit in order to really focus on what matters, and really create more joy in our everyday roles. And just to kind of reiterate, this was we talked about this at the beginning of the conversation, but just kind of want to reiterate, these are human skills that we have as HR professionals that AI cannot replace. We are valuable. We bring empathy and judgment, ethical judgment, and trust to the organizational environment that we support to our employees. we can help to establish the culture. We can be courageous in the conversations that we have with employees and with leaders, in order to help people through, difficult situations, or even complicated projects, or just, frankly, being there for employees in a way that certainly an AI system cannot. So it's incredibly important to remember how valuable you are to your organization, no matter what AI tools are being used. Oh, of course. Let's see if it'll let me go back. It will. Okay. This is my last poll question of the day. So if AI freed up 30% of your time this quarter, how would you spend it? So, think about where we're at, June 5th, it's where we're at in the calendar year. If AI could free up 30% of your time, that's a lot. 30% of your time this quarter, how would you spend it? Where, what item would you pour yourself into because it is a necessity within your organization, or it's an area that you love, to spend time in. It's an area that you feel passionate about, or it's maybe something that your employees truly need. And as well as your leaders, maybe your leaders truly need your time to be better spent in one area here versus another. When I put my own professional development, I really did. Knowing HR professionals, I kind of knew no one would choose it. Because I know how we're all kind of gluttons for punishment, right? We're all very dedicated to our organization, and we're very much wanting to support our employees. So that does not surprise me that no one chose that. But yeah, strategic workforce planning. I mean, this is something that's knocking at our door. AI is forcing us to have this conversation, and I wholeheartedly agree that's where I would have chosen as well. All right, now we're going to talk action plan. So here's some practical next steps to help you kind of elevate your role. You can start. I said starting this week. I should have just said starting next week, because I don't envision anyone starting it today on Friday. But I do think that here's some practical things you can take away. And being in HR, I love a good 30, 60, 90. So that's what you're getting from me today here. So what I've got here is just kind of like a plan of attack. So over the next 30 days, I've got, these items here where, you can really focus on, audit and experiment. And then over the next 60 days, really, shifting and skilling up, and over 90 days, kind of leading and advocating. So really kind of chunking this out and making it a little more digestible of how you can incorporate some of these things into what you're doing today. And the first thing over the next 30 days, or however long it might take you, if it takes you longer than 30, some ideas for you could be, audit where your team's time is going. Track it for at least 2 weeks, and, identify, what are those top 3 administrative tasks that are consuming the most time. And just start with one. Just pilot one AI tool that can help with one of those tasks. And then meet with your team, or if you're a team of one, also consider carve out the time and really sit down and think about what do I wish I had more time for? And is this pilot that I'm doing with this AI tool, is it saving me any time, or is it creating more havoc for me? And I also have there's some really great material out there through Gartner, through Josh Bersin, that I think could be really, really impactful. So if you are looking for more resources to use as reflection and insight, those are some great reads. And then over the next 60 days, really, kind of level up a little bit in terms of like formalizing one AI assisted workflow. So really think about, okay, I piloted a tool. Now I'm ready to take this workflow and really kind of embed AI into it, and really kind of take a look at the results and how that's going to work. Is it something that's working well? Is it not? Do I tweak it? Do I not? And really monitor it and take a look at what those results might be after a period of time. I highly recommend enrolling in at least one AI for HR course. There's some good ones out there. I mentioned Sherm and Coursera here. You might actually get some suggestions as well through the Gartner and Josh Bersin material. It can't hurt, right? It might take a couple hours of your time, maybe a little bit more, but it's going to help you to get a clear framework of the different types of tools and trends that are out there within HR and how AI is being leveraged in ways, honestly, on the daily that is brand new and exciting and evolving, over time. Um, Also, use over your 60-day window here, schedule monthly strategic HR sessions with business leaders. Have more conversation with your business leaders to understand pain points. Maybe you can translate those pain points into new processes or tools that you can leverage to kind of make life easier, not only for yourself, but for the leaders you support. And launch a manager coaching program, begin collecting data on your team's capacity gain from AI. These are things that as your time gets freed up, you can be really focused on some things like coaching and like hindsight, looks at the data to determine if some of the changes that you're making are truly improving your processes. And then hopefully within 90 days, you'll be ready to present your AI within HR, your return on investment data to leadership. Really kind of making business cases of like, hey, we tried this out. We piloted this. We were able to free up, X amount of time. We were able to connect with business leaders to understand if some of the changes that we were making to our processes were helpful and impactful to them. And we began to collect data, and here's what that data shows. And it's valuable for leadership to see that because, as leaders are looking to invest in AI, but they're not necessarily, AI in HR is not necessarily top of mind. We have to make it top of mind for them. And by sharing that ROI data, that will continually build the business case that we need some additional dollars to continue to improve our efforts because it will touch every single person in the organization. Hopefully within 90 days, you can also redesign one HR role to, kind of flip the script on what they're focused on and what their responsibilities are to kind of reflect some new priorities now that they've got some time freed up. You can also lead a listening session. Now it's okay. After 90 days, I've gone through and I've done this great work of piloting things. Now what? What's next? What am I going to spend my time on now to enhance and to elevate? And finding out that information directly from employees is a great way to ensure that you're touching on their needs and improving a process or something that is challenging for them. Build or update your HR strategic roadmap for the next year. Don't we all wish we had more time for that? So, I do think that, as you continue to integrate AI into your day-to-day, you'll be at a place where that'll become a little bit easier. And it'll also be something that's more iterative, like over the course of the year, as opposed to a one-time exercise. And you can also begin to start kind of leading the change, right? Leading the AI and HR, being that champion for your organization, and really kind of showing leadership and employees how important it is to incorporate AI into their role, not to replace them, but to elevate their role in a new way. This is some resources, tools, some further reading and learning opportunity. If you're interested, I have some essential reading that, this is a lot of where I pulled some of this data from today. Really great sources. There's a lot of, great organizations out there who are providing certificates in AI and within HR. And I listed some of those, and then also some recommended AI and HR tools to explore. These are some great tools to take a look at and just see if it's something that you might be able to incorporate into your processes. It might even be something you can pilot for free. So a lot of these tools have free periods of time at which you can use their tools and check them out before committing and investing dollars in it. So our key takeaways here before we kick things to the Q&A. So again, I think I've said it probably 4 times now, but I'm going to say it again: elevate, not replace. So AI is already in HR, and the question is whether you lead the change or you end up reacting to it. So that's our choice, right? The administrative burden that AI removes is actually a gift. So if we leverage AI tools in a way that is going to help us be more efficient and more productive, we can take that time to do the work that changes lives, that changes our employees' lives, that really adds value to the organization. And your most valuable skills, empathy, judgment, influence, trust, they're irreplaceable by AI. So, if you're in a place where you've been hesitant with AI, maybe it's been a little bit scary, you don't like the idea of thinking a lot about it, or you only incorporate it into your day if you absolutely have to, just remember that some of that might be coming from being a little bit scared of it, and you don't need to be scared of it, because your best attributes as an HR professional, empathy, judgment, influence, trust, those are irreplaceable by AI. The real examples that we talked about today, they show that when AI handles the routine, like HR can drive measurable business impact. So if AI is handling a lot of the tactical pieces of the work, as long as you feel very confident about how it's working for you, you can then shift your focus to other areas to help drive that measurable business impact. And lastly, start now. You could start next week. You could spend the next 2 weeks auditing your time, taking a look at how am I spending my time each day. Oh, what I'm seeing is I'm spending 50% of my time, entering data, answering emails on things that are out there for employees to access. Audit that time. That's a quick and easy one for you to do. Pilot one tool, and really kind of start to reclaim your role as a strategic business partner. I think that for us, there are moments where we feel that we are strategic partners, but there are a lot of moments where we do feel like we're just needing to keep the lights on, and we're pulled in multiple different directions. Leveraging AI can help you to elevate your role and really kind of reclaim that strategic business partner status, but also help you feel really confident about the value that you're adding within the organization. You're not just checking the boxes anymore. All right. Okay, I kind of made it. 12:48. I was hoping for 15 minutes, but I did my best to get there. So Q&A. So feel free to submit some questions. I definitely see that we've got at least one in here. If there's any other questions you have, please don't hesitate to add them to the chat. I will hopefully be able to answer all of them. And if I cannot, I would be happy to recap any of those questions offline and get those back to PJ so she can disseminate them if anyone's interested in that. And you can always, email me directly, reach out to me through our website, or at my email address, which is lauren@nlbenefits.com. Feel free to reach out directly if you don't want to throw it in chat today. But we do have chat up now. And I see we've got a question here. What are ways HR professionals can improve AI literacy? So thank you for the question. And, I really think that there are some great sources out there. I think I mentioned a few in the presentation today, but in addition to those sources, I really like, taking a look out there like almost weekly to see what new webinars are available through really reputable sources. I really like Gartner. I think that they do a fantastic job of distilling information, really complex AI information, into digestible pieces that are like easier to talk about and easier to understand and easier to kind of put into your own frame of reference and perspective. There's also, there's some great certificate programs out there. There was one that was through, I believe it was HRCI. I don't think it was SHRM. I'm pretty sure it was HRCI. They have a great certificate program. I've known 3 different people who have gone through it and were very pleased. They were able to get a baseline understanding of just AI in general, but HRCI spent a lot of time really focused on AI and HR. And they felt great about they didn't regret spending the money or the time. And it definitely was something that they were able to get something out of. So I think it's great when anyone, but particularly HR professionals, truly want to improve AI literacy because it's changing so fast, it's happening so quickly, it's evolving like by the moment. And the more that we can educate ourselves, the more we can be of value to the organization because leaders are going to are often going to make decisions based upon dollars and cents. And I think it's important for us to understand what's going on behind the scenes and what AI, means to the world, the society at large, but also, being able to translate the direct impact of AI within our organization. So thank you for that question. That was a great one. Is there data on retention of staff hired through an expedited process using AI? Fantastic question. I did not find any, but I bet you there's a survey that is in process right now that's planning on probably producing something like that. Within the example that the IBM example, I mean, they ultimately were identifying that I think it was a little over 90% of the 5,000 people they felt were at risk, over 90% of them stayed. And so, do you, I'm a little skeptical sometimes on data points like that, right? Because then it makes me want to ask a million more questions. So, I think that's pretty high percentage. I'm not exactly sure how they determined that and what period of time they were kind of measuring turnover and, if whether someone's reported separation or termination reason was accurate. There's lots of different variables here. But, if you take a look at the IBM case, they're claiming that over 90%, people are staying through identifying that they potentially are a flight risk. When you think about expedited processes like the recruiting or onboarding process, I was unable to find any data points yet that were really valuable and that I could rely on and would want to put in front of you that kind of helped to identify, okay, when we infuse AI into what is usually a very like one-to-one process, does it help or hurt? I think that anecdotally, there's been a lot of information out there that it can hurt, that there are people who feel like a number during like an onboarding or a new hire process, for example. But I think if done right, when AI is infused and put into the process, and we as HR professionals find the right checkpoints and points within the process where we are infusing that human element, I think it can absolutely be powerful. But in terms of actual data, I haven't been able to find anything out there quite yet, other than what's been being reported in some of these company-sponsored case studies. Great question. Thank you. Okay, so what instrument did IBM use to determine the at-risk employees who may leave the company? Let me just go back here really quick because I actually forget the name. And I think I had it on the slide. So they were using Watson Talent Insights, which, if I'm correct, Watson's their product. So, probably tooting their own horn through this case study. But, Watson Talent Insights, they have been, that's been, oh, gosh, I think they started leveraging these types of tools in this way since like 2015. And just looking back at my notes here, this IBM case study, the estimated retention savings that they reported in this case study was based over a period of time of 2018 through 2024. So Watson, the Talent Insights, tool is quite robust and it's been around for a while. But again, it is their tool that they used in their own case study. So, take it for what it is. The data is the data, the outcome's the outcome, but there could be some influence there that might not otherwise be if it was a different organization. Let's see here. Great question. Okay, I've kicked around the idea of developing a GPT to help managers walk through decision factors, keeping with policy and compliance, and to give increases to hourly rates for our SCA workforce. Do you have any words of wisdom to share I should be mindful of when further developing this idea, especially as it relates to compensation? Loaded question, Javier, but I love it. So, you know, some of my take here and my recommendation would be, when you are creating something like this, it really does help to kind of bounce your ideas off of people who are not directly impacted. So when you're building a tool like this, having some trusted folks to kind of help test it out is going to be incredibly helpful. They're going to be able to bring perspective and insight that you will not, because you're so close to it. So I'm thinking, like, if you were able to build this tool and felt comfortable maybe inviting a colleague or a former colleague, or maybe even someone from the Roundtable group here that you've become friendly with over time, to kind of just run through it for you, and kind of give you some insights, I think that could be incredibly valuable. And then other words of wisdom, I mean, what I have seen through our clients that are leveraging, I'll call them chat GPTs, they're large language models, the LLMs, when they're leveraging and creating these tools, they're really, two ends of the spectrum. We have some clients who are very, very happy to partner with their IT groups in order to ensure that everyone's on the same page and the tool is compliant with security and all of this. And then we also have some clients who don't want to work with their IT team and want to kind of build these things on their own. My word of wisdom would be to build an internal cross-functional team that kind of works on this tool together. It's important that whatever tool you create and you roll out is, ideally free from bias, ideally as secure as it possibly can be, and creating those partnerships with areas like IT, like legal, as you're building these types of things out, will be helpful in the long run for you. And so I would advise against kind of doing it on your own in a vacuum. I Okay, we got 3 minutes left. And so I'm probably just going to hand things over to PJ here to kind of, wrap things up before we jump here in 3 minutes. And I just want to say thank you to all of you. Thank you so much for joining today. And like I said, if you have any questions or concerns, please come find me. I'm on LinkedIn, our website. My email again is lauren@nlbenefits.com. And hopefully I'll have a chance to join you all soon in the future for another session.
Lauren, thank you so much. Everybody, thank you for joining us. This has been great. It's such wonderful information, resources, and also I loved how you talked about things that HR can do above and beyond AI with all the things that we're implementing, that we still need to be here. And there's so much that we can do to help support the growth and the development of AI in the workplace, but that we've got to help guide that. And as you said, working with other teams, IT and other within the organization. So thank you so much again. Thank you all for joining us. We certainly do appreciate it, and we hope everybody has a fantastic day.